make you nervous. Groove in the streets, all we wanted was conversion. Police pointed out, man, they got the wrong person. Never made it out of this, trying to keep my brother. Lord, we just some niggas and we using all our numbers. Praying for protection and the Lord to keep you covered. Now I'm in the middle.
Myself and some other members wanted to create an atmosphere where police were not so quick to go into our communities and murder our people. We thought if we organized patrols in our own communities, it would bring down the percentages of police killings in our neighborhood.
They me like no other, now they asking who are we? We're Mr. Officer with Huey P. Take the shackles off of me. I'ma do the same for the things that I believe in, the power here in me.
Police always have what you call the upper hand. But when you have armed militant black men who are out patrolling the communities, that makes them a lot less likely to commit violence against someone, knowing that there could be
Giving power to the people while I'm serving. I grew up in the streets where the laws don't make you nervous. I grew up in the streets, all we wanted was conversion. Police point out, man, they got the wrong person.
What we're trying to do is get black people to understand their gun laws and get black people to start organizing gun clubs. In the event there is some type of emergency where we're attacked by white supremacists or whomever it might be, that we're able to defend ourselves.
It's in our best interest to start training the youth now while they are young, because eventually they will inherit the struggle. So we have to give them the information and the wisdom that they're going to need to battle white supremacy. Each movement, each generation has a role to play in our struggle. And again, it would be in our best interest. It would behoove us to start educating the youth now, to start training them in firearms, start training them in survival.
What food are you going to eat? What's going to be good food to eat? Rice. These don't do no 24-hour water. They're good for 12 years, 13 years. Some of them good for 20 years.
All right. Peace and power. Welcome to Truth to Power War Room, Comrade Omar Wally. And today, man, we want to have a conversation with one of our brothers who we've been struggling with since 2020. And our conversation today is going to basically be about black gun ownership, how it started, and how we got to the point that we are today with black militias and black gun clubs and black groups all over the country. So let me introduce my comrade, brother Nick Bezel, out of Austin, Texas. I believe now residing in Houston now. And just a little background, I first linked up with comrade Nick in the year of 2020, I believe it was, right? Okay, and he was doing a protest slash march for a unlawfully imprisoned black man, brother Marvin Guy. And Nick was bringing the issue to the light so that we would all know about it. So he got in contact with me. I don't know if somebody linked us up or we got in contact via Facebook or internet, but it happened and we've been soldiering together ever since. So brother Nick, introduce yourself to the people and tell the people exactly where you hail from.
I appreciate you having me, Commander, and you using it to help our people, our plight. Now I actually between Austin and Houston, but when we first permanently resided in Austin, Texas, but now I'm back in Austin and Houston doing work for the people. We did meet in 2020. Our channels to get your phone, and and that's when I called you about on and Austin and Brother Marvin God. And ever since then, we've been rocking up. And I always salute you because without your support, a lot of I know certain people, but we were able to no knock warrants, which was Marvin guys and just that, and it created with us. Man, no knock warrant. Antonio followed suit, and no, also no knock warrant. So struggle, that's here to our because we understand Black people portion to be affected by warrants. The Huey P. specifically.
Brother Nick.
Yes, sir.
Your audio is like very choppy, so the engineer is asking me to have you log out and log back in, and we're just going to start over again. So we're not going to run the video again, so we're going to wait on you to log out and log back in. So while we waiting on Brother Nick to log out and log back in, man, we give you a little background on the show. Today we're going to be basically discussing Black ownership. When did Black men first begin to take ownership of firearms? I have a pretty good idea, but I wanted to discuss it as a people and as a community, because where we are today in 2023 is amazing compared to where we came from. And I wanted to discuss our plight and how we got to this point. So we got Brother Nick logging back in. Hopefully his audio is a little better. Let me see what kind of bars we got. Okay, brother, go ahead and yeah, go ahead. Let's see how it's coming in. Again, tell the people where you're from again, and really how you got to this point to where we are now. I apologize.
No, is my audio?
I mean, we can hear you, but you're still kind of phasing in and phasing out. Maybe it's possibly the room that you're in, or
let me take out the devices. Do I sound better?
There you go. We locked in now.
Oh.
No, we're not.
As you were saying earlier, Austin and Houston right now do work. So I'm back and forth between. Like I was saying earlier, I reached out to you in 22 channels to get your number. Once I was able to get in contact, we've been going ever since. And I was just telling everybody, salute you and the Huey P. Newton, because without you all guys' support, have been able to get those banned in Killeen, Texas, which is different guys incarcerated. Also created a domino effect because of the ban no knock warrants, ban no knock warrants, and we have been pressuring state law to ban no knock dates. So yeah, that was back in 20. We had that 20 in 2021. Conduct the maneuver in Dallas. We all know Mississippi and just things that we've been locked into ever since then, and initiate every minute of it.
Copy that, man. Your audio is still choppy. I don't know. Maybe it's in the room, but it's kind of very important for the people to hear you and understand you. So, I mean, maybe I don't know. Is that the best room where you get the best reception?
Yeah, it is.
It is, huh? Okay. We're just gonna have to work our way through it. Maybe it's your Wi-Fi or something, but we'll work our way through it, man. And today is very important as we're discussing black gun ownership and how we got to this point in this country. Okay, let's see, did he fall off? So it's like this every time we try to start a show on Truth to Power War Room. We don't know if some people don't want us to actually get this show on the air and for black people to have discussions about firearms, but we're going to fight through the technical difficulties because just like everybody else, we're going to talk with our people and we're going to talk about our plight and we're going to talk about self-defense. So just bear with us a minute while we try to get the audio for Brother Nick up and running the correct way so you guys can really be in tune to a great show, man. We got a lot of information for you guys, a lot of information that a lot of you probably didn't know about. So we're going to see if we can get back in. Okay, right, go ahead, brother.
Can you hear me? Is it better?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just like cutting in and cutting out. It's kind of really about the same.
Okay.
Are you in Houston?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell the difference because when you're at home and at your Austin resident and you got the flag flying behind you, your audio is perfect, man. So maybe just the location that you are in Houston, you know. Big old crowded city, man. Y'all sharing all that Wi-Fi down there, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, man, we're going to try to start out as far as black people and their first ownership of firearms. Obviously, it had to happen during the transatlantic slave trade as brothers and sisters would start to resist. People that were friendly to black people as far as the slave trade is concerned, I'm sure they helped get firearms into the hands of black people. Hell, some black people knocked them upside the head, man, and confiscated firearms as a need for their survival. But I'm going to say a lot of people who were wishing for the abolition of slavery were the first to put firearms in the hands of black men. Going back in history, how important do you think that is for our people to show resistance from the very start?
I think it's very can hear what I'm saying. You have to remember, right? The transatlantic slave trade, 1620, 1640 in Virginia, race-based, total gun and self-defense, and free blacks from carrying weapons, including clubs. So you're talking about 20 Atlantic slave trade. They already had started inserting able to defend ourselves. And so that's why organizations like ours, because we can sit here and prove we have to be able, regardless of some of these laws that may come into place that try to harm us, because we understand all guns make sure that these laws that now we are allowed taking up arms to defend themselves, because we can't expect anybody else to come and save us.
Right. Man, that audio is very choppy. Usually it's me. I got mine worked out finally after 3 weeks, but that audio is very choppy, Nick. I don't think that the at-large community can understand what you're saying, because I mean I can't. Your audio is chopping in and out. So are you using your phone, or are you using your computer?
See if it's better. Give me one second. I'll come right back.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, man. So just bear with us for a few minutes. I know it's frustrating to not be able to hear and understand what our comrades are saying, especially when we're putting out such vital information about our history. See, that's what it really all boils down to, man. We're trying to teach the proper perspective and the proper events that took place to us being a armed society in this country. As you know, in America, North America, my niece is running rampant in the background, so y'all bear with us on that. If you hear her, she's part of the family. It's Sunday evening, you dig what I'm saying? So, but to get back to our story and to get back to our history, it's important that our people know how we got here. Because now in this society and in this culture that we have now, you would think that black men and black women have always had access to firearms. Think that we've always had the overlying ability as a community, as a state, and as a nation to defend ourselves. But that has not always been the case. So we kind of wanted to talk to you about that path that we took to get here. So when people have questions for you in the future, that you are able to use this video as a reference if need be, but we would rather you look the information up for yourself, but that you would have something that you could identify with as far as our path in this country. So gonna give Brother Nick a few minutes, but I mean, let's move on to, we understood what took place during the transatlantic slave trade. Black men, we gained access to weapons any way we could, whether we had to bust his mask upside his head and take some of his, whether we had to take out some of his goons. Black men and women in this country have always been revolutionaries. We didn't just stand idly by and fight it and just let slavery happen. A lot of us fought against that. A lot of us lost our lives fighting for our freedoms. But no history books is going to write about that. What they do write about are the riots that they call rebellions that happened, such as places like Rosewood, that happened in places such as Tulsa, Oklahoma, and all over this country. It happened in Arkansas. It happened in St. Louis. But these were basically white men, white militias attacking the black community, and us not having the resources to fight back. So right now, it's all about having the resources, man, to understand that we are in a very unique place in 2023. So as we move up through our timeline from slavery, now let's move into the emancipation of 1865. We got Brother Nick back. Let's see what type of audio we gonna have. Man, we trying to hold you hostage until we get this right. Damn it.
All right. Let me know. How's that?
Well, starting off a lot better, my brother. Starting off a lot better. Yeah. What did you do? Did you switch to your phone or you switch to your computer or?
No, I just changed locations.
Okay. All right. Still a little feedback, but man, we're gonna work through it, brother. We're gonna work through it.
Just let me know if it's too bad or if it's a little bit better. At least hopefully it's a little bit better than what it was a few minutes ago.
It definitely is. It's a lot better than it was a few minutes ago.
Okay.
So we discussed how important it was for those revolutionary ancestors of ours, the slaves, to gain access to firearms, whether they did so from people who felt sympathetic or from some abolitionists, or whether they just had to bust somebody upside the head to get the firearms. Because I was saying that our people have always fought for freedom. When people look at history, they think it is a passive history and that our people never resisted. So I was explaining to the masses of the people that we have always resisted in this country. We have just never just accepted the fate that we were given as slaves.
Right.
So
Right.
as I comment on that, we move up.
And I think no, I was just going to show us, why it's important for us to possess firearms as Black people here in America. In the laws that you can look at the timeline and see all the laws that were passed that continue to prevent Black people from owning firearms. City having that illegal stop and frisk laws, but even when the Second Amendment was written here, the United States came back with another law with the Black codes saying that Black people could not be a players. People can arm themselves as a militia. And in the next year, you say, well, Black people can't be a part of a militia. So the white power structure here in America does not want Black people armed.
Absolutely. I believe it was 1863. Forgive me if I'm slipping on some of my history, when Lincoln officially emancipated the slaves. Up until that time during the Civil War, it was basically a stalemate between the North, the Yankees, and the South, the rebels. But after the emancipation of the slaves, thousands, hundreds of thousands of slaves would join the Yankee troops and fighting for battle. I believe it was over 100,000 brothers, Black men, documented that actually joined the fight. So what do you think, in your opinion, what made these brothers say, you know what, let's participate in our own fight for freedom instead of just depending on the white soldiers to follow through with that emancipation process?
I mean, with anything else in life, you can't depend on someone to give you something. You have to, and just sitting back and waiting to see what would happen between two groups of white people. Your fate is in which side loses. Well, at the time, they have to choose, and I don't believe in choosing the lesser of two evils, but that's what our ancestors, and so they had to side with them, because the alternative was to continue to remain in slavery. Somewhat freedom. I mean, we understood what happened directly after the Civil War, and to include, excuse me, toward the end of the Civil War, which is about colored troops fighting right there in Natchez, Mississippi. But if any of us had to choose between sitting actively participating, I think that's a no-brainer. And again, you fast forward to now, and I heard you say the other day, a lot of these people, you know, but the thing is, organizations, self-defense units are preparing Black people in the event these others also be able to defend ourselves and not wait what happens between, again, two white groups who decide that civil war is in the best.
Got you. Brother Quasi is texting me now. He wants me to join in on their Zoom call, which we're going to have to do that after we finish up here. So they're having a discussion about competition shooters versus combat shooters. I mean, the whole versus thing, man, that's something that we could deal with later. Right now, we're going to stick to this timeline. And as you mentioned, Black folks had to make a decision. The lesser of two evils. So even though there were a lot of Yankee troops that were glad that the Negro soldiers fought on the side of the Yankees, that meant less of them had to go to battle from that perspective. But there were a lot of Yankee troops that definitely did not want to fight for the abolishment of slavery. So it's like they was in a situation where it was a catch-22 for them. You know, they had to fight for the unity of the United States, but it was not necessarily for the freedom of the Black men. So I just wanted our people to understand that what changed the tide and what changed the balance of war was the 100,000 or so Black men that joined the Yankee Army, and that's what led the Yankee Army basically to victory. Is the Black man not depending on other people, but basically getting out there and fighting the fight and eventually winning that war. So we want to let people know that we fought for ourselves. It wasn't just the white man or his army, that we were full participants in that struggle. So my question for you is now, the war is won. It's 1865, and we're going through the Reconstruction period. During that period, after the war, directly, all of the Black soldiers that had firearms and firearms training, the newly formed United States took away that right for those soldiers to own those firearms, basically saying that you served your purpose in the war, now give me back your rifle. How do you think our ancestors might have felt at that time from just fighting a war and now coming back to being disarmed?
You know, I'm not going to sit here and say what I would have or wouldn't have done if I didn't live then. But I'm sure it had to be very difficult for them to have to turn their firearms in, ended up turning their firearms in after the war. And here you are, like you said, fight this war for your freedom somewhat. If people don't know, Field Order 15, which was actually the reparations portion of it, the 40 acres. So every from us, you know, our ability to have 40 acres, farm our own land, have our own way of living, our own homestead, that was taken away from us. Our ability to defend, we still didn't have it as a people, because what America is supposed to be built off of. What the things that make people whole second time, you know. So it, I'm sure it had to be very difficult. But you just look at that whole construction, you look at Jim Crow, you look at the black codes that were put into place where we couldn't defend ourselves. And so now you have this whole white domestic terrorism that was waged against black people after the Civil War from 1865 to 1960. And just all the unwarranted attacks on people. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but like I have on this shirt that says Black Wall Street, or the other places, Arkansas. I can just go on with all the places where black people were slaughtered at the hands.
Nieces in there cutting up, y'all. Just give me a second. Hey, girl. Hey, quit making all that noise. Sorry about that, family. Sorry about that. My nieces are here, man. They visiting their big uncle, so that's part of the process. I don't know, man. I haven't been looking at football. I'm still following it. How are those Eagles doing? Anybody aware of that? I mean, are they winning? Okay, on to the next segment, man. On to the next segment. After the Reconstruction period, obviously, it lasted about a couple of decades. So now we started to move into the 1900s. We're going to go into a specific period, the 1920s, as we understand that Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street was the people that lived there were murdered. They were assassinated. They were by white militias. 2 years later in Rosewood, Florida, the same process took place. From your point of view, as a people now, what did we learn from that history of Tulsa and the events that took place, not only in Tulsa and Rosewood, but again, that took place throughout the country? So what did we learn from that?
I think you cannot sit around and wait or depend on anyone else to protect us, our family, our loved ones, our people, our community. They'll understand that every time we were put in a situation, we were forced to defend ourselves. Understand the importance of self-defense. We talked about, the Civil War, and now we're into the 20s. If these catastrophic instances happened against black communities, thriving black communities, I want to say, but you would have brothers who would be willing to take that stand against, white supremacy and white domestic terrorism. We Peg Leg Taylor, going up on Standpipe Hill for hours and hours, holding off people to evacuate the Greenwood district, because if it wasn't for their sacrifice, they said the numbers up to 300. Imagine what that number would have been if those 5 brothers didn't take up arms and hold off those terrorists. I mean, it got to the point where they bombed the Greenwood district because they couldn't penetrate the area due to people, due to brothers who took up arms. There is we all have to subscribe to the philosophy of never again, that we aren't going to allow that type of terror. You know, it's very important that the message of self-defense is continued to be projected amongst our people, so they understand the ability to defend yourself in the face of any type of terror or violence that could be committed against our people.
Absolutely. You mentioned Peg Leg Taylor, one of the brothers that stood on the hill and shot downwards at the white supremacists who were trying to charge the Greenwood area. Wasn't he former military? Wasn't he a veteran? So, man, we're going to get to that point here shortly.
He was my
and a lot of the people that defended these communities were former Civil War veterans, and I just want to get people to start understanding that process, because due to certain principles, there are a lot of people that say veterans should not, black men should not fight in the army, because we're supporting an imperialist ideology, because we're helping the United States to basically conquer other countries. And I want to be one of the first to say is that I do understand that ideology and that way of thinking. But there's also an alternative to that, that there are black men sometimes don't have the financial support that we need to say not join the military, because we don't own our own businesses. We don't own our own infrastructure. So for a lot of people, it leaves us at a position whereas the only options we have is to sell drugs, to be a pimp, or work for minimal wages at that, if not even end up in prison. So starting with the emancipation around 1865, black men and women, they put those skills to use. So veterans are very important. And as you find out tonight, they have been paramount in our struggle. So as we move from the 1920s, now we go into the 30s and the 40s. I forget, there was a group of soldiers who were based in Houston, Texas. I can't remember the name of their unit. I was supposed to look it up today, and there's actually a movie out about them. A group of soldiers, I believe this was around anywhere from 1914 to 1920, and they were based in Houston, Texas, where they ran up against a lot of racism and a lot of discrimination, because they were soldiers serving in a white army, and white people just were not ready to accept black men owning firearms, especially being soldiers at that time. So what eventually happened is the harassment got to the point where they beat one of these black soldiers so bad that it caused so much anger with these troops, with these comrades, these colored soldiers, that these colored soldiers actually went back to the barracks, retrieved their weapons, and then walked down the streets of Houston, Texas, shooting white people, including police, including civilians, anybody that that they felt like was a threat or took part in the racism. These brothers sought vengeance. So I think it's important for us to get their story out there, and again to let you know, anytime a black man had access to firearms, we always stood our ground, even at the threat of death itself. Do you happen to know what that unit was? I can't remember exactly what that unit was.
I can't think of the exact unit offhand, but you are correct. It was in Houston time. I believe they were building up the barracks in Houston, and that color unit, um, I believe, was the security force for, and there were whites on the job site. They were the ones doing the construction, and so there was always some back and forth between, the local sheriff or whatever it was, and you're right. That's what led to the conflict of those colored soldiers going back to the arms roots in the streets of Houston. They said enough was enough. Again, here we are when you see a common theme of black and in choosing, people can call it violence. I call it self-defense, because where do you draw the line in the sand? How those soldiers drew a line in the sand. They had enough, and they went out to Houston, targeting people who had been abused.
Absolutely. And during this time in the United States, racism was still at its height. Anywhere from the early 1900s all the way up until the 1950s or 60s, the Ku Klux Klan was very prevalent in the police department. They were prevalent in government, and they had a lot of hold under President Woodrow Wilson. He was so ecstatic about Ku Klux Klan and what it represented. He actually played the movie The Birth of a Nation in the White House, the original Birth of a Nation. So if you go and Google that, it's not going to be the Nat Turner version. It's going to be the version that they played in the White House under Woodrow Wilson. And this is a film that shows how America looks under the guidance of the Ku Klux Klan. And just wanted to say that President Wilson was very proud of that, Woodrow Wilson. And for those reasons, man, I think we need to have his name struck from all the government buildings. We have a Woodrow Wilson High School here in Dallas. I think his name needs to come off of all of these learning centers and all of the education centers, because Woodrow Wilson was a blatant racist who believed and supported the Ku Klux Klan. So our engineer had just got back with me. The name of that infantry unit out of Houston was the 24th Infantry. And I believe they had about 156 soldiers, and half of them marched downtown Houston, just shooting anybody that even looked remotely racist. So, and they got hung, and they lost their lives for that. And they knew what the outcome was going to be. But sometimes your morals and how you are as a man, walk like a man, dictates that you do something, man. And all we needed was firearms, and they had them, and they showed the people what black men could do once they got firearms. So that was August 23, 1917. Appreciate you, Engineer. Good job on that. So now, Nick, we're moving up through the 1920s into the Great Depression of the 30s. Black men are struggling. Now we have a world war coming into play. Of course, Hitler and his Nazi regime, and a lot of black men and women, they joined the military or recruited for the military, where they fought vigilantly for this country, but was still discriminated against. Almost to the point, even when they came back home, they were more free fighting in war in Europe than they were when they returned back to America. So can you let us know, I know you can't put in perspective how they felt particularly, but how would you have felt going off to fight for the freedoms of America and the world in the 1940s, and then coming back home and just being a nigga again, up under attack by the growing Ku Klux Klan?
I think that question is really two parts to that question. You look at the service side of it. You're a United States service member, but you're handicapped at every turn because you're considered mentally inferior. At the stories of the Black heroes in World War II. Right now, they're building an aircraft carrier named after Dory Miller, who was he was a cook in the Navy. And when Pearl Harbor happened, he got on an anti-aircraft gun and sinking around him. This Black man who they felt is only good enough to get in a boxing ring or cook food jumped on a weapon system. You look at the Tuskegee Airmen, the Red Tails. You know, they thought Black people can't fly planes. Well, they started losing any bomber planes. And of course, we all know about, you know, our infantry units. You know, they don't know about is the 761st Black Tank Battalion. The Black
Panthers, the original Black Panthers.
Mm-hmm. And they were, you know, you look at some of those hard fought wars, those hard fought battles in World War II. Black people, Black men, the fiercest fighters the Germans had, and were being successful. And so imagine if they were doing that, getting the same training and the same resources that the white soldiers were getting. How much more lethal would they have been? You know, so we have to take that into consideration. To go through all that, to come back home and have to sit at the back of the bus, sit in the colors only. The road in Austin from the library to the state capitol, when we walk down that road, there's a restaurant right there called Victory, specifically for Black service members. When they were coming back for World War, it's a historical landmark. When they were coming back from World War II, they couldn't own cooked meals or, you know, restaurant cooked meals because of everything that was going on in America. So the Victory Grill was built for, you know, women back from the war and be able to treat them in a dignified manner, being out in public. So like I said, it's and then you look at the return and how they were treated. Like, these people are heroes. These people had done great things in defense of the nation, and to come back and be treated like that.
Absolutely. So the war ends in 1945, and again, I'm not a historian, but I know that's when it ended. You know, but now Black men and women are coming home, and what we just say, they still have to deal with the blatant racism. So we're moving from the 40s into the 50s, and now the civil rights movement is starting to pick up steam, pick up energy. And Ku Klux Klan were still relevant in Black society. So as Black men and women are out protesting, the Ku Klux Klan is basically threatening them and telling them that you can't protest, you can't do this, nigger, go home. And then you start to see a new type of black men who would start to appear. Men such as Robert F. Williams, who was part of the NAACP at one time. And you know, when we hear our people talk, man, they talk down on the NAACP and you know, it was started by a white person and all that, but some of our greatest warriors have come from the NAACP. That's where they got their start from. Brother Robert F. Williams, Commander Fred Hampton out of Chicago. These were brothers that came out of that movement. So with Robert F. Williams and him leading the charge for black men to now become gun owners in a time when racism was really very heated, what type of courage do you think it took coming from this black man to be the first to say and the first to preach that black people need to start forming rifle groups and pistol clubs? Because he was basically the grandfather to all this shit.
People react to us today, right? 2023, 2022, how they react to us today. So imagine in the 50s and the 60s, imagine people still had that plantational mentality. So to say that you're going to pick up a rifle, or the shock factor probably was unreal for those brothers and those sisters who decided to take up armed resistance against white supremacy, knowing that you could, you know, not only be ridiculed, but basically have your own people turn against the slave patrol, anybody. So the amount of courage it took to even start standing up these self-defense veterans. And it's just, you know, so many brothers and sisters during that era had military training, and they, you know, I'm not going into great detail, but for you all who don't know, the great General Geronimo Pratt was don't know the story about 41st and Central in Los Angeles at the Panthers headquarters. You might want to look into that, because they really took it to the LA training in their videos, not just in this book, but in videos from jail, when General Geronimo was talking about, you know, he believed, make sure they could be effective. And they asked him, would he do it again? And he said, absolutely, I would do it again. And that's the type of, you know, moral character, armed resistance and armed self-defense. So, you know, without them, there wouldn't be any of us doing what we're doing today.
Absolutely. And one of our great sisters during this early period was Sister Fannie Lou Hamer. You know, she's famous for saying, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. But what a lot of people don't know, she didn't just talk the talk. Fannie Lou Hamer kept a stash of firearms up under her bed at all times. Fannie Lou Hamer was so about her business that if she was waiting on a white supremacist to come kick her door in, to try to throw some type of torch or something in her house, Fannie Lou Hamer was going to give her the business. And this goes all the way back to Ida B. Wells, who was very famous about the Winchester shotgun, basically saying that a Winchester rifle, I'm sorry, should be in every home. You know, so y'all talking about having cars. Ida B. Wells at that time was talking about every home should have a Winchester shotgun. So moving on up our timeline from the late 50s until we get into the 60s, I want a lot of people to know while we're talking about Robert F. Williams is that Robert F. Williams and Malcolm X were great friends. It was Robert F. Williams who introduced Brother Malcolm X to the organizing of Black people with firearms. And Malcolm X would frequently invite Brother Robert F. Williams to the mosque. I believe it was Mosque number 7. I mean, don't quote me on that. I believe it was in Harlem. Well, I believe it was Harlem, not Brooklyn, but Harlem. But anyway, do the research on that. But Brother Malcolm and Robert F. Williams were partners. And I'm saying that just like in the struggle today, where a lot of the activists and the civil rights people, it's a very small circle. So just like we work together now, they were also working together then. A lot of people know that it was Malcolm X who said, "Let's form rifle clubs and pistol clubs," and you know that's a very famous statement. But I want you to know that mentality did not come from the Nation of Islam. That mentality came from his brother Robert F. Williams. So let's give that comrade the credit as being the grandfather of the Black self-defense movement, because before him there was really nobody that took up that armed position on a national level. So we're moving into the early 60s and we're moving on down our timeline. We still have issues in Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, a lot of the southern states. The Klans are still relevant. So a new group during the civil rights movement would eventually pop onto the scene. And this group will be called the Deacons for Defense. A lot of you have seen the movie, and a lot of you probably know the history, maybe even better than I do. But I do want you to understand that the core of the Deacons Defense and the people that they recruited were ex-military, men and women that had fought in World War II. So you see where I'm trying to link this in here with the people. I'm showing the people the active role that Black men who have been in the military have always participated in our fight for freedom. So the Deacons for Defense, who were basically church-going men, righteous men out of Bogalusa, Louisiana. After seeing some of our people being beaten and after seeing us not being allowed certain freedoms, took up arms. Can you tell the people what you know of as far as history is concerned about the Deacons for Defense?
When you go back and look at their history, like you said, you know, they were churchmen, and they were also veterans with chapters in, really preached self-defense to the fullest. You know, they didn't advocate violence, as I say. They always, you know, but they a lot of self-defense organizations today somewhat you know, maybe even unknowingly after the Deacons for Defense, because their whole program was to allow other Blacks about their business, exercising their First Amendment rights, being able to either protest, vote, worship, so on and so forth, agitators. And it's been documented that the Deacons for Defense have discharged their firearms in defense of their people, and there was no fear in those brothers. So, you know, I think maybe some people, even like I said, or organizations subconsciously, a lot of the organizations you see today are modeled after in some form or fashion elements of the.
Absolutely. With that being said, I just want people to see how the history is being passed down from one generation to the next generation. They learn from Robert F. Williams. They learn from the Deacons of Defense, who were relevant from basically 1964 to 1968 as a national organization. So later, in between that time period, will become the development of the Black Panther Party up under Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. So we're starting to see the Black Power groups, or the Black militants. I don't want to call them militias, but the Black militants are starting to really take hold from the late 50s all the way through the 60s and into the early 70s. So as Bobby Seale would and Huey would go back and do the research of the Deacons for Defense, as Bobby Seale and Huey would go back and do the research on brother Robert F. Williams, it made it a lot easier for them to come up with a platform that benefited the people because of the research that had been done, because of the work that had been done by these previous ancestors or elders that came before them. And again, I didn't want to forget the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Even though they were a non-violent activist group, as time went on through the early 60s, they began to change their ideology from that of non-violence to basically saying that you're a fool if you don't defend yourself. So even though they came from that, which was Martin Luther King's, I believe he was the one that started the non-violent movement, that a lot of our activists and a lot of our revolutionaries eventually signed on to that, but they would also come to the point where they would say, you know what, this nonviolent shit is really not working, you know, and as Black men and women, we have to be able to defend ourselves. So now we move up into the time period of Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale from 1966 until probably around 72, when the movement started slowing down because of counterintelligence infiltration and things like that. From your experience, again, you just spoke about Brother Geronimo Pratt. What is it? What else about the Black Panther Party that you could say kind of led us into the direction that we're going in today?
Yeah, I think when you start looking at the Panther Party, Oakland, but all the Panthers, Chicago, LA, just all the chapters, the East Coast ones. But when you, that image, right, where you see Capitol with those rifles and those shotguns, I think a lot of times people fail to realize, people in the movement, these leaders were like, they really studied, and as we do, and you and I have had these conversations offline as far as laws and firearms. They knew what they could do and push the line, and that's exactly what they did. So much so that now, and a lot of people, have this argument, but there's really no argument. The Mulford Act wasn't even governmental. To see Black armed resistance taking a stand against the white system, they couldn't have behind the Mulford Act. Now you're talking about the pinnacle of white firearms got behind a law that restricted for a time. And the only reason why that happened was because, again, you're talking about Blacks with guns, with firearms, understanding the law and what it takes to defend themselves. And so that's kind of when you really start to see black people in the manipulate the system to work in their behalf.
Got you. And again, I want to make the correlation to the people that let's go back to the 1860s, 60, 65, the Reconstruction period. It was the black soldiers who were protecting the villages. I mean, let's move up till the 1920s and Rosewood and the few that fought back. All of these men were soldiers that put up some type of resistance. Even the soldiers that were returning home from World War II and the Deacons for Defense, it was the soldiers who put up some type of resistance. And even though the Black Panther Party was totally against imperialism, and we should all be, they still recruited black men and women out of the military because of their skill sets. So, I mean, it just really irritates me, these Facebook discussions where you go on and start calling people coons because they served in the military and all of this wordplay and shit. You know, if it were not for our black veterans and our black soldiers, we would probably be in a lot worse condition than we are right now. You know, so I just want to continue to give shout outs to those who serve, black men. That's all I'm giving shout out to is black men and women. I don't care about the rest of that shit. But I'm giving a special place to those soldiers who went out, got those credentials, got those skill sets, and then brought them back to the people. Because the thing is, you're going to kill. We're humans. Humans are going to kill other human beings. So would you rather be off somewhere else killing what's perceived to be your enemy, or would you rather for it to be at home where black men and black women are killing each other? So, I mean, just something else for us to all think about. So, from around 72, you know, the Black Panther Party started to kind of fizzle out a little bit. And after the Mulford Act in California, we start to see a lot less open carry for black men and black women. It basically went away altogether. But in 1989, brother Aaron Michaels of Dallas, Texas, formed the new Black Panther Party here in Dallas, Texas. And they again openly did patrols in the black community, shutting down a lot of crack houses and shutting down a lot of drug houses and things of that nature. So 1989, so between 72 and 89, there was a vacuum of black men and militancy that was taking place around the nation, especially when it comes to open carry events. And one of the things that I want us to always remember is what took place in Jasper, Texas, after the dragging of James Byrd. It was Dr. Khalid, Aaron Michaels, and the new Black Panther Party that went down to openly deal with that issue, carrying our firearms. So that was a big vacuum, man, from 72 all the way to 89. What do you think was the reason that black people as a whole started to fall off and not know the gun laws and the Constitution go in open carry?
I think, and this is just my opinion, but I think black people got to a certain level of comfort, right? Because you're talking about you had integration, and so you had a lot of black people conform to a certain level of comfort. You know, they tried to, and so because of that, a lot of them, and I'm not gonna say all of them, but I'm just saying a lot of them, based on my experience, my observation, be equal now, you know, and so when they feel that they're equal, then for them, it's just like, hey, we don't have to approach things the same as we're equal now. The police are going to, protect us like they protect our white counterparts, so on and so forth. Ice cubes at a foolishness that black people were tricked and deceived into manipulated into believing. And I'll say this: a lot of people don't understand that Dr. King also carried a gun. He also had a handgun, and he applied for a concealed carry permit and was denied. But the consequences in the work that he did. So when people talk about, passive, nonviolent, yeah, he was nonviolent, but again, the term self-defense. Dr. King also said, excuse me, after integration, he started to see the effects. He said, I believe that I have, he was talking about all this stuff that they thought was going to be, little white boys and girls holding hands and playing at the playground. But he realized his dream was really in place over the course of 20 to 25 years, led to a certain level of complacency in our community because we felt that we had arrived at it. And then here we are again, like you said, starting in '89, we realized, the racism is still there. Communities with dope, calling the slave patrol police officers or community policing. It's no different than what they were doing for the last 300 years. You had this resurgence, of black militancy that kind of came back in after realizing, hey, we're doing the same things. They just evolved the tactics that they've been using.
So basically, from 1997, after the murder and dragging of James Byrd, there's another vacuum. So from 97 up until around the early 2013s, 2014s, for black people, open carry basically became a non-existent again from 97 to 2014. When I came into the movement, well, I had been in the movement since 2003, but when I came to organize and form the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, I only knew of about 2 gun clubs nationally. One of them was Asafo, which is based in Atlanta, Georgia, and they're more a family-owned gun club. They're not a open membership, so they just basically came together to protect their families. And the other one was the Urban Sharpshooters, who was ran by James McCoy. They was, I believe they were around a couple of years before us, but they didn't, Asafo aside, Urban Sharpshooters was kind of like a, let's go to the range and shoot a couple of rounds and drink a couple of beers. And a lot of their members probably at that time would not have been able to make the cut, and let's say Elmer Geronimo Pratt or the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, because of their ties to other parts of society that are not good for the principles that we're standing for as activists. But we formulated the Huey P. Newton Gun Club in 2014, and I personally didn't know of any other groups that had done open carry on a larger scale since 1997. Between that time period from 97 to 2014, are there any other gun groups that you know that were actively doing any type of open carry?
No, I didn't. I didn't see much of it. I didn't hear about it in 97. You know, it all went away. But then 2014, 2015 rolls around, and then it didn't matter what part of the country you lived in. You all were making the news based on your open carry. I always like to give flowers while people are still here, and I know you've probably heard me say this on numerous occasions, but you are the godfather of nations. A lot of people are where they are today because of your example and what you have been able to accomplish with the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, and so that you've put in, formulating and creating what we see today in the modern Black self-defense era.
Well, I appreciate that, because a lot of people who didn't catch some of the historical perspective thought the open carry started with NFAC in 2020. So and nothing, I mean, just shooting shit, man. Nothing against the NFC, nothing against Grandmaster Jay, or we're not even going to get into that. But I am going to make one comment about Grandmaster Jay. One comment. I wish that he would have studied the firearm laws more proficiently before he was in a rush to go out and just display a big group of brothers and sisters with firearms. I feel like they hit the ground running. Probably the largest gathering of Black men and women that we will ever see in this country at any time, either past or present. But I wish he would have spent just as much time studying the firearm laws as he did organizing the masses of the people to do the marches of the art or anything like that. So we go back to 2020, the same year that I met you, the same year that Grandmaster Jay debuted at the NFAC. During that year, Black men and women bought more firearms in this country than any other ethnic group. For the first time in North American history, our people led the way in firearm purchases. What do you think brought this process to, what do you think made it Black people start getting into firearms the way that they did?
Well, I'll tell you what I know from people telling me specifically, because I'm sure you saw an uptick in members. It was just so much going on in 2020. The pandemic happened, so there was a lot of instability there. It was the summer of the protests, George Floyd, Breonna, people having to fear to protect themselves. The elections, right? It was 2020. The elections were coming. So it was out of DC with the politicians, who they support, who supports them. And so then you also saw during the last Democrat, if I vote my interest. I don't care about none of that stuff, because both of them groups really don't have, anything good for Black people. What I will say about Trump, he was a blessing and a curse for Black people. He was a blessing because, right, when we had like Obama or Clinton or whoever, even Bush to the younger Bush to a degree, racially out in the open, like it had been when we talk about ancestors what they had to deal with previously, right? Like there are instances here and there, you know, so on and so forth. But Trump brought the white supremacists out in full force. Like there was no denying, there was no hiding. You knew exactly what it was, and they had no shame in who they are. So because of that, it was a blessing and a curse because it allowed us enemy was openly. But it's a curse because, you know, there's really no going back from that. And I think as people heal from that, because it's like I said, there's no going back from it. People are dug in, and it is what it is. And so because of you said what caused the uptick in firearms in 2020, it was a mixture of all of those things. And so we have more black people want to be a part of a network, because that's really what all this is. This is a network of black people in the event the most catastrophic things could possibly happen here in America. And so we just must be prepared for whatever comes. So all the way up until now, because now we understand that the 2024 election, people in modern history being here in America.
Okay, so let's close out with this. I gave us a little voice at the end of the show. Tell the people again, two-part question. Tell the people again why you formulated the Elmer Geronimo Pratt Gun Club. And second part of that, what was your thought process behind organizing Tulsa, Oklahoma, and organizing the trip to Mississippi?
Okay, so how we formed the idea came about in 2019. Just friends knowing that I was big into firearms. People that I knew wanted to get into firearms, so I would start taking, you know, brothers and sisters to the range to do some training. Because the one thing that I've always heard was people would tell me they didn't feel comfortable going to the range alone. They didn't feel comfortable going up there, and it made them feel uncomfortable. Black people, by and large, would rather learn from people, a white person who they don't know if they're really being honest with them, or if they even have their best interests, or even just being neutral, saying, hey, you know, this is the type of they go about determining what's the best firearm for them. So a lot of black people have a certain level of comfort when they're 2019 was like that. 2020 is January officially of 2020 is when we stood up. But when you really our gun club was the first weekend of the protest in 2020, where myself and a few members had went downtown Austin to just watching black people exercising their First Amendment right, their right to assemble and protest, by the slave patrol That day, we made a conscious effort and said, hey, if we have any ability to start seeing us going to protests or demonstrations, and trying to be a buffer between protesters and the slave patrol. Specifically, where a guy was killed in downtown Austin during the summer of the protest. He had an AK-47, and he shot him and killed him. Well, his wife was a quadriplegic, so he would carry his AK and push his wife's wheelchair. That she was actually, they were creating a memorial on the corner where her husband was killed at. And the Austin Police Department flipped her out of her wheelchair and kicked, they just kind of tore it up. And like I said, this young lady, she doesn't have any legs or any arms. They flipped her out of her wheelchair, started tearing up the memorial for her husband. So I had one of my members reach out to her and asked her, did she plan on having another memorial for her husband? And she said yes. I told her to give us the time in the day downtown Austin. And as we walked down there, APD started driving by. And one of them was driving along the side of us as we were setting up a perimeter. He actually asked, are you all going to the memorial? And we gave him one answer, yes. That was it. And the police drove by several times, no one. And we'll be damned if you're going to come over here and brutalize this black woman again while she's grieving the loss of her husband. And so back to when we talked about our ancestors and other self-defense units. What are we here to do? And we're here to protect the people and protect them. More aggressive in those situations. As far as Tulsa goes, I think that was our ancestors who made the ultimate sacrifice to lay down their life in defense. That handful of an entire community, and to pay our respects to that 300 plus that lost their lives due to white supremacy down, a thriving black community at that. You always hear the term black people should pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Well, it's hard when you keep cutting the leg due. So, the overall vision was to go there, pay our respects, and bring ready. Hopefully, again, when you start to intertwine this network, to make sure that if something like that were to ever happen again, collective, that we wouldn't stand for that, and we would draw the line in the sand and make sure that it didn't happen again. And as far as going the same lines, just understanding what took place there. Another part of history that isn't taught in the history books, but we have to be paying attention to these type of atrocities that happen, and so it'll never be forgotten. So, and again, to pay our respects to those there in Mississippi, in Natchez, and to include those colored soldiers who were there fighting in defense of the
Absolutely. Just let me say, man, it's only been 3 years, but it has been a wonderful journey with you, organizing with you, being in these events, and again, how organized they are. We've never had a misfire. We've never had anybody to freak out on us and you know, load their weapons up and just turn on the people. All of our events have been safe. And Tulsa, to me, and Mississippi, I've been to a lot of gun carry events, but Tulsa and Mississippi, to me, were the pinnacle of any type of open carry movement that I've ever been involved in. And the reason for that is special reason is because we were paying homage to our ancestors. We have events every day where black men are murdered and black women are murdered, and we march and we get out there and we soldier for them. But to show the world that we have not forgotten the atrocities committed against us in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have not forgotten the atrocities committed against us in Mississippi, Rosewood, St. Louis, Arkansas, and so many other places around the country. For me, that speaks volume. So I again want to let you know that I appreciate you for being the commander and the general and the organizer that you are. So as long as I'm in this movement, you got my support. The Elmo Geronimo Gun Club has my support. And a lot of people don't know you're also a veteran. So, thank you for your service. So that's why I was going over all of these. This is why we was going over all of these events, man, where we show our veterans have been active participants in our struggle. So when you start going out your way to slander your veterans because we served in the military, think back on that history, man, because if it wasn't for our veterans, we would not be where we are now. So, okay, I mean, we went over a little time, a little bit. We was going to try to keep it around an hour or so because people have very short attention spans, man. So we wanted to try to keep it within an hour. But give us your closing discussion, brother. What would you like the people to know, and what does Elmer Geronimo Pratt have coming up soon that people can participate in?
Supported us over, 3.5, 4 years. I appreciate all the support. I don't think but a lot of people don't understand. It takes to pull off, not just like these, these formations, these large formations, but even the things that people don't really political prisoners. A lot of people just see, justice for this or free, so whoever, whether it's Marvin Gaye or Ozone or whoever organized, and just having so much support from so many people. I appreciate it all. So I thank all the people for that. And it's definitely Texas Toast shooting competition. We'll be in attendance with 2 teams. Salute to the Huey P. Newton Gun Club. So I salute you all for, a lot of people, it's a competition, but at the same time, I think it's a training environment as in person to be with each other, talk a little trash, and just sharpen each other's skills. So I appreciate that. Finally going to start. It'll be 9 years to the day when it starts. So anybody who wants to come from the state, from God, let me tell you, when he had his bond hearing a couple months ago, there was only 17 black people to show up, of white people who showed up that were against him. We have to change the dynamic in that courtroom. We have to change the dynamic of when we go out here. I'm down in the month of May, the second week of May, starting the 8th. Please contact me, let me know. I actually going to support in any way that you can with this trial coming up. But I ask any and everybody to come out because we have to show support, because a botched no-knock raid at his home where they were looking for drugs and no drugs were found. And again, we're talking about self-defense. There was a police for killing that officer. There's no ballistic report to say whose bullet actually killed him, but it shouldn't matter because he wasn't committing a crime of us, where no-knock raid could be some trumped up charges, especially in the space that we're in for our people. And so you would want someone to support you, his Second Amendment rights. And of course, every September we have our Unity Walk in Austin. So that's going to be the 3rd September, Saturday in September, 2023. So, all these other things that we have going on, justice again. So, if you have any questions or want more information, just go to our website, www.calendarup. You can always look there. If you're looking to train, you can fill out the application for training. If we don't have a trainer in your area, I'm a Wally here, and if they have someone in that area, then I'll pass the information on to them, because at the end of the day, it's all about getting our people trained. Geronimo Pratt Gun Club, it doesn't matter, just as long as our people are getting training from a reputable organization. That's all that matters to me. So I'm gonna end it on that.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, Brother Nick Bezel, founder of the Elmer Geronimo Pratt Gun Club, one of the elite gun clubs in this country. So just because you don't see a lot of people on Facebook or social media, just know that we are still organizing, off of social media and behind the scenes. And again, I look forward to you, Brother Nick, coming to the Texas Toast and telling you, man, don't bring that Canic down here, bro. Don't bring that Canic.
Oh, we're ready.
Moon already beat me, so I've been training every week since then, bro. But I look forward to your group and all of the rest of the revolutionary comrades coming together that day and getting in some training, getting a little competition. But I also look forward to the camaraderie that comes with all that. So again, thank you for coming on tonight, man, and having this discussion, Brother Nick Bezel. And we're talking about blacks and gun ownership. So not Negroes with guns, but blacks with guns. Peace and power. Close us out, engineer.